Okay.
I wonder where their message gravity is. It's like, what is
Okay. Yeah, it's cold in here.
That was fine.
It's pretty chilly. Alright, well, let's see who else shows up today. The link is working, right, Greg?
Yes, sir. The volume working?
Anyone?
I don't see it online yet. I think Artem must be joining online.
Okay. Did you post on the Slack?
I did. Hey. And Greg. Okay. What is that? I don't know.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, it's none.
Okay. We're going to get started. Should we wait a few more minutes?
Maybe a couple more. See.
So we have, well, okay, so we have a presentation by Greg today for authentication, authorization of executors. We have Jira management on the agenda, which, oh, right, that's around like how to manage all the flooding of tickets. And that's about it. That's all we have on the agenda. I don't know if anyone else has ad hoc topics that they want to discuss, but please add them if you would like.
Okay.
I think the MesosCon North America call for talks went out.
Oh, really?
I think I saw something. I may be wrong.
I think it's good.
I think I saw something. I don't see it. I don't see it.
Did you guys get email or something? I didn't see that.
But I
Read about it.
Read about it. Okay. We didn't send it on the dev list yet.
Any idea when the schedule for Mesos Con Asia?
I think Wilbert should know. I think by this weekend.
Yeah, we promised the. Are we streaming?
Yeah.
Okay. So the vote result is already out. So we cut the vote on Monday, and we're gonna send out the schedule on Saturday, April 22nd. So yeah, 2 days from now. So that's the promise we sent. Your promise in the mailing list. So it's also identical to the date on the website, the Mesos Asia website. And basically, we're gonna select like 30 top plus 6 keynotes for Mesos Con.
How many of you are going?
Depends on if the talks get accepted.
Yeah, we are expecting there are many attendees this year because it's held in Beijing.
Okay.
And it's in the National Convention Center. It is the biggest place when people host conference, and it's really expensive. And there are many Mesos users in Beijing. There are many big guys, and I just heard like there's a video streaming company called QIY, and they launched container, Mesos container with unified containerizer around like 3 million per week. 3 million containers a week. And last week they launched 5 million.
Wow. That's awesome.
Yeah, those are batch job.
That's pretty cool.
Do you know which scheduler they use?
They have their own scheduler, as far as I know.
Their own custom scheduler.
Yeah, they have their own framework.
Cool.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to talk to them when we're there about
Yeah, they have a
the
talk.
framework. Oh, they do.
I encourage them to submit a talk for Mesos Con.
Cool. Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
The Linux Foundation is still sponsoring, running it, right? Mesos Constant. The videos will be the same quality as before and everything.
I'm confirming with Linux Foundation. So for the video, you're seeing the recording of the conference. So previously we don't have sufficient recording because we just record a couple and then post it on the Linux Foundation website. But I will try to confirm with them to make sure like we post all the video for each talk. Yeah.
Cool. All right. I think let's get started with Greg's talk.
Cool.
Oh, I think I need to. Are you sharing your screen here, Greg?
I did, but it didn't show up. There we go.
Sweet.
All right. So we are nearing the end of the implementation of executor authentication and authorization. Most of the code has landed in Mesos at this point. The authorization code is currently in play and will be landing really soon, so it's almost wrapped up. So I'll just go through the motivations and the implementation today, and then we'll do a short little demo to show it in action. So SSL support has been in the code base for a while, and that allows people to encrypt traffic to and from executors if they would like. But even in this case, the agent can't be certain of the identity of the executor that it's talking to. The agent spawns a process and it expects to hear back from this process. But especially with the HTTP API, which exposes these endpoints that accept requests over non-persistent connections, it's uncertain that the process on the other end is the executor that you think it is. So this is especially relevant in a multi-tenant scenario where you could have tasks that are dealing with sensitive data running next to tasks from some other division, some other group in the company on the same machine. So here's an example attack scenario that we could imagine occurring on an agent. Let's say an agent launches an executor, and there's a malicious process running on this agent as well. So this could be another Mesos task, perhaps run by someone else in the organization. And once that executor is launched, the agent is going to expect a subscription from that executor. So we could have a process that is repeatedly attempting to subscribe. If it knows or is able to predict the framework ID involved, and perhaps knows the executor ID, then it can attempt to subscribe as this executor. And especially with the executor ID, it's not unreasonable to expect that someone might be able to guess this or might have knowledge from within the organization that would allow them to specify the executor ID, since these are specified by the framework. So if this process is repeatedly attempting a subscription, it could succeed at the moment that this executor is launched, but before it has actually subscribed with the agent. And if that subscription is successful, it could then receive launch events from the agent, which could contain sensitive information, labels or data sent from the framework. And it could potentially launch tasks and status updates to the frameworks and messages.
So right now, if the victim executor is already registered, what happens if the malicious one tries to subscribe? Is that rejected?
No, so if it's already registered, then currently the agent will actually accept the new subscription and terminate the existing persistent events connection.
Okay, so even after registration, someone can come along and just steal the stream essentially.
True, yeah. And I think this case is potentially, this case could be especially bad because we know that immediately after that subscription, you're going to get a series of events that could contain privileged information. But you're right, even in the case of an existing executor that's already running, you could subscribe and it'll terminate the existing connection. So one thing we considered early on was whether we could obviate the need for executor authentication by implementing Unix domain socket communication for executors. So we decided not to go this route. We decided it wasn't sufficient for a few reasons. One, that it wouldn't be platform independent. So if we wanted Windows support, it's possible we could also do a similar thing on Windows with named pipes, which Windows does have. But we would need two implementations for this. Going the authentication route with a token allows us one implementation that works for both platforms. Also, the executor uses the agent operator API, so we don't have a clean separation of the API calls that the executor uses, and thus the API calls that we would be using this domain socket authentication proxy with. So it gets entangled with both the operator API and the executor API. It complicates the Mesos authentication authorization story a bit in that we would need to associate an identity with this Unix domain socket connection. So that could mean perhaps generating a principal for authorization based on the connection. So it complicates that story. It also increases the coupling between the transport layer and the application. And another concern we had was dealing with name sockets on disk when we have multiple executors running as the same user. being sure we could restrict access to the socket file even when multiple executors could potentially have access to it. So in light of these things, we decided to go with kind of the existing authentication and authorization pipeline that exists in Mesos, but come up with a solution that would work for executors. And we wanted to come up with an MVP that would allow us to flip a switch for executor authentication and authorization and just have all existing frameworks work to continue to operate without any changes. So we're imagining in the future, we may want frameworks to be able to pass identities down to their executors to use. But in the short term, we wanted a system that wouldn't require framework updates to start enabling this feature. So we're relying on a couple modules. So we implemented a few new modules in order to make this happen. So the authorizer module is already around, the local authorizer, and that interface exists. One new module that we added is this secret generator module. So the basic idea is that we're generating per executor tokens every time we launch an executor on the agent. And the secret generator module is responsible for that. In the MVP, we're just using the default module, and the user cannot yet specify a custom generator, but in the future that'll be possible. All right. So we also added the combined authenticator. So the combined authenticator holds ownership of a couple authenticator modules and then calls them in series and returns the first successful result. So this is something that was kind of anticipated previously. The existing flags for HTTP authenticators use the plural. So we were expecting at some point we would support multiple authenticators. And this project gave us an impetus to actually add that support. So there's a Mesos level authenticator called the combined authenticator that allows you to load multiple authenticators into it, and it'll take care of calling them and returning a successful result if it finds one. I guess I'd swap those two around. Then we have the JWT authenticator. So this is a new authenticator module we added that will handle executor authentication. So users could load their own custom authenticators to handle executors. But in the default implementation, the default configuration, we will load this JWT authenticator for JSON Web Token in addition to the basic HTTP authenticator. And it will handle authentication of the executor tokens. So we also added a new principal type. So this allows us to handle more typed information coming in the authentication token to distinguish what executor we're talking to. And it also adds a little more capability in the entire authentication and authorization system in Mesos so that developers and operators can do some more complex things with their authentication systems. It's pretty simple. We now have a value field in the principal. So it's represented as a struct. Since this is a libprocess object, we represent it as a struct instead of a protobuf message. It has a value, which is optional. So that's equivalent to the existing string principal that we've been using in the code base. We now also have a hash map of claims, so you can store arbitrary key value pairs, and this is where we're identifying the executors. And yeah, I should say that most places in the code base now where we were previously using the string principal, we have now started using this new principal struct. There are a couple places, like for example, the framework subscription, like when a framework subscribes and we store its principal, we still store that as a string, and we will migrate in the future to using this struct in there. But for the MVP, we haven't gone there yet. And we added some implicit authorization rules for executors. So these have been added partly to the local authorizer, partly to the executor API handler. but we've added implicit roles that basically allow executors to do things to themselves. So they can subscribe as themselves, they can launch nested containers within themselves. We're just verifying that they are not trying to do something to another executor or as another executor. And another important point is that this is all being added just for the v1 HTTP API. So HTTP executors can authenticate. That's HTTP command executors, custom HTTP executors are their default HTTP executor, but v0 executors do not have authentication. So the claims that we're using in the new principle to represent an executor simply contain the framework ID, executor ID, and container ID with these keys. So I'll just go through the workflow of this default implementation. When an agent goes to launch a new executor, it is first going to call into the secret generator to generate an authentication token for it. So it presents the secret generator with a principal, and the contract with the generator is that it should return an authentication token that, when presented to the authenticator, will return that principal. So we pass it an authentication token that contains these, or we pass it a principal rather that contains these claims. And the secret generator returns an authentication token that we can present to the authenticator and get those claims back. So that token is then injected into the executor. Currently, we inject it into the environment of the process. In the future, so file-based secrets are on the roadmap in Mesos, are being thought about in general, and we would like to switch to using TempFS-based file-based secret in the future because that'll be more secure. Putting them in the environment is not ideal, but it was good for the MVP. The executor then provides that token to the agent when submitting calls. So when it subscribes, it places this token in the authorization header. And the agent then, well, so strictly speaking, this is happening at the lib process level. The lib process invokes the authenticator. This JWT authenticator will get called. It'll validate the signature on that token and return a principal. The agent then confirms that that principal is able to perform this action. So that could be calling into the authorizer for the operator API, where the authorizer will validate that this executor can perform this action on the given container ID. Or in the executor API, the handler would verify that this executor is attempting to subscribe as itself and not as someone else. So now we can show a little demo. So I have here just a few scripts to run a master and agent, and then
I think you have a question. Is
yeah.
someone trying to ask a question? Oh,
Maybe
okay.
just some line noise.
Maybe some nice. Okay.
Feel free to ask questions if you have them. So I'm going to run a very simple master with not too many arguments, but when running the agent, I'm going to specify some flags. So a couple of these are new flags that we've added. One of them is this authenticate HTTP executors flag. So this enables required authentication on a new realm, a new authentication realm in which the executor API sits, the executor endpoint. We also have this executor secret key flag. So when using this default secret generator and the default JWT authenticator, this lets you specify the key that's going to be used to sign the tokens that are generated and then will be used to validate the signature on those tokens. And then we're setting the HTTP command executor so that when we use Mesos execute, we'll get the correct executor. And we're setting these ACLs, just very simple permissive ACLs, so that the authorizer is loaded, and this will mean that the implicit authorization logic for the operator API, the agent operator API, does get called. Oh, and it looks like I'm missing a thing. Yeah, of course. Oh, sorry, it's not too big. Yeah. All right. And then when running our tasks, yeah, so to run a failed task, we're going to use Mesos execute, simple command, and we're going to overwrite this environment variable, which is used to communicate the authentication token to the executor. So the executor will come alive and not have the token it needs in order to authenticate. And for the successful case, we're just going to run a very simple task. We'll spit out the environment just so we can see that the token is contained there. So run our master. Run our agent. First, we'll run a successful task. Got task running. So let's come back to the agent log and find the sandbox. So we'll check out standard out from that task. And we see this token here. So a JSON web token is separated into 3 components, separated by periods. This middle component is the payload, and it's base 64 encoded, so we can decode it and see that our claims are in fact encoded there. And then the latter portion, the final portion, is the signature, which the authenticator uses to verify that this is a valid token. So now we can try our failed task. The task is submitted, but we don't see a task update coming back. And if we go back to the agent, we see these repeated calls against the executor API. It's retrying the subscription. And again, we'll look in the sandbox. You see it's receiving these error events. If we look at standard error, we see it's receiving 401 unauthorized for those subscription calls. So that is the demo.
Does that get cleaned up at some point?
Yes, if it doesn't subscribe within 1 minute, it gets cleaned up. Yeah, I could have let it run for a minute. It'll fail.
Cool.
So future work, we do have improvements we want to make. We want to allow custom secret generators. We want to implement an HTTP Authenticate module. This will be good for both HTTP schedulers and for HTTP executors. We can define an interface that will allow developers to place authentication place the Authenticate side of authentication logic in HTTP executors and schedulers. Right now, this is just hard coded into the default executor, but by making this modular, someone could use a custom secret generator, a custom authenticator, and then have a custom authenticate module that plays nicely with that authenticator. We also want to move to file-based secrets. That'll be more secure in the long run. We will move all of the implicit authorization into the authorizer. So there's already a little bit of implicit authorization in the scheduler API because we verify that a scheduler's principal is the same as the principal stored in its framework info. So we don't allow a scheduler with a different principal to do something as, so a framework can only do things as its own principal. And this is just verified in the HTTP scheduler handler. It's implicit in the V0 API since that authentication happens once and then a persistent TCP connection is established and all subsequent calls occur over that connection so that the constant nature of the principal is implicit in that scenario. So this check just exists in the scheduler API to verify that that's the case. So we have similar checks now in the executor API. And in the long run, we would like to move all of that implicit authorization into the authorizer. And currently, all of this executor authentication has SSL as a dependency. So OpenSSL is needed in order to build the JWT components. But you don't necessarily need to build Mesos with SSL socket support in order to build the JWT components. You just have to have OpenSSL available. So we haven't yet updated the build system to allow you to build the JWT stuff when SSL is around without also building SSL socket support in. And I'd definitely like to thank Vinod for all his help reviewing, designing. Jan did a lot of work on this as well, and Anand also helped out a lot with some review work. So thanks to those guys, they've been instrumental. Right. And that's all I've got. If anybody has any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Questions, anyone?
Anybody online?
Online? In the room?
You know, questions?
I asked some questions already.
Yeah, you asked.
Okay, great. Thanks, Greg.
No problem.
So the only other topic that we have on the agenda is Jira management. Vinod and I talked about this very briefly, but we want to talk about it in more general context as to how to manage the tickets and how to do backlog grooming and stuff like that. I don't know currently what happens and what we do. Like, I think Ministry On Call does a little bit when they have time. I think there are a few like backlog grooming meetings. I don't know if those are still happening. But yeah, does anyone know or?
So we're talking about Jira, not review board?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes. Like, do we have any like process currently that where we look at Jira and try to trim it down or anything like that?
I'm not aware of anything formalized. Are you Vinod?
So for the external ones, the only thing that's kind of active and that we work on is the Scrum board, right? The sprints.
Okay.
Yeah. And I don't know how many new users actually know about that sprint, but maybe they get emails and someone updates the sprint and creates a sprint and adds stickers to the
Wait,
sprint.
which sprint are you talking about?
The Apache Mesos sprint that the Mesosphere sprint in ASF.
Oh, you're talking about the Mesosphere sprint?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
But those are all public sprints, right?
Sure.
On ASF. So that's the only thing that's probably visible and that's actively kept up to date.
I thought we also have a Kanban board.
Yeah, we also have a Kanban board, but I don't think we regularly look at that one to make sure that's up to date, and we don't do any kind of triaging of that one.
I see.
At some point, me and Artem spent some time trying to curate this, but we never kind of finished it. So that board is, I guess, the very first board in ASF. You actually go to rapidboard.jspa rapidview equal to 1. That's the,
Sorry, what did you say? Just-
if you look at the dashboards that are in ASF,
Yeah.
our dashboard name, the Kanban board's number is 1. So that's the very first
Oh,
dashboard that was ever created in ASF.
Oh, I see.
So we were kind of pretty early in the game, but we didn't kept it up to date, obviously. But that's the board that we have. I guess
So, yeah, so let me share my screen.
you're sharing the screen.
Is there a big backlog? So like a lot of
It looks pretty big.
things. Great.
So this is, I guess this is what you're talking about, right?
Yeah. No, this is 111. There's one for like number 1, just change the name and number to 1 in the URL.
Oh.
I don't know which one is newer and which one is older.
Which one is this? Oh, this, oh, okay.
Yeah, so there is one called Apache Mesos, and I guess there's one called Apache Mesos Kanban that you just opened.
I see. So here, under all boards, I see all these. Like, I guess this is the first one, right?
Yeah, that's probably the one. And Apache
This was
Mesos
one of them.
Kanban is probably the one that me and Artem started
Uh-huh.
and trying to update it. I think, yeah, you can probably open that one.
So this is 1, this is 11.
Yeah, these are the two things that we have, but the backlogs that we have here, we don't do a good job of,
This list is super long.
yeah, this is, I guess, based on epics. And then we have things without epics. To do progress done.
Mhm.
Yeah, I guess if you go to the first one, the other one, Apache Mesos. Yeah, this one is probably a little better curated, I feel like, because this one has things that are accepted,
Mhm.
not everything that got filed. That's something that we
Right.
actively accepted, that's something that's worth working on. And the stuff that's in progress, stuff that's reviewable, and the stuff that's done. So I think that's in progress and reviewable. I think that pretty accurate description of what's happening on what we are doing in progress. Some of the reviewables are probably not actually reviewable. They probably have been discarded. I guess we don't actually update them. Like modernized network and replicated log, and one thing is actively being reviewed, for example. A bunch of Windows stuff here. There is termination policy stuff here, which is not actively being reviewed. So yeah, I guess one thing that we wanted to bring up was what's the best way to try to do this. Are people looking at this board? Do we want to publicize this board more on the dev list and have like a weekly cadence or bi-weekly cadence to actually doing this every once in a while? Do you guys have any thoughts around it? Is it worth doing? But what else can we do, I guess, in terms of making sure we are prioritizing the high priority tickets coming?
I guess the thing that I like about it is that it gives teams working on Mesos at different organizations kind of a central, just a common workspace.
Mm-hmm.
That seems like something that's lacking.
Mm-hmm. So this is what pursuing, you guys think? Trying to like groom this every, I don't know, once a month or once every couple of weeks or something like that?
Is it growing quickly?
What's that?
Is it growing quickly?
I think it's growing. I mean, if we are just looking at accepted tickets, but if you just look at all the tickets that get filed, it's definitely growing.
So are there really only 75 accepted tickets?
Yeah, I think most of the tickets we don't accept them. They're all in open state.
Okay.
We don't accept them. But they sometimes directly go from open to progress. We don't always follow the
Yeah.
policy of going through accepted.
So is the idea is to groom the accepted ones, or the idea is to groom the ones that are not yet accepted to see if you need to accept any of them on a regular basis?
I guess both. I think we figure out which ones in the open are the ones we need to accept. And then I guess we need to figure out criteria for what accepted means. Like when is something accepted? Is it something when there is someone who decides to work on it? Like there's an assignee and maybe there's a shepherd. That's when we should probably accept it. Like we get commitment from people for writing it and reviewing it. Maybe that's something that will take a ticket from open to accepted.
I
And
guess-
then when someone starts working on it, we can move it to other
I
stages.
guess this is a board where you go from open to accepted.
Apache Mesos Triage, that's a different board?
Yeah, there's there's like 6 boards, and I don't know
Yeah,
what.
so I think that's the first thing we need to do is we need to consolidate on one board.
Yeah.
Looks like we have Apache Mesos, Apache Mesos
1,
Kanban,
2. This is ours.
this is Scrum board,
3.
Tech
There's
Deck,
this one as well.
Twitter, Scrum board, probably very old, we can already delete that.
Oh, yeah, but even 1, 2.
Mesos Community
4,
Triage
5.
board.
It's like 5 boards, 4 or 5 boards.
Ian Shu, are you trying to say something? We cannot hear you. So unmute you.
So, am I muted?
No, we can hear
No,
you.
here, yeah.
So I guess right now, I guess I didn't get the earlier part. So only Mr. Scrum is kept up to date.
Yeah,
Okay.
essentially, yeah, that's the only board that's kept up to date. And we're trying to see if we can keep at least another board up to date where other people are working on. Like, do you guys do scrums on ASF at Apple? I guess not. Yeah.
No. So we have our internal tools, but I just wanted to say that the part you mentioned that is the echo from me?
You sound okay over here.
Okay. The part Vinod mentioned that he did it with Artem. So I feel like more community participation is nice, and I certainly am up for participating. So in terms of grooming the backlog and determining what should be accepted and what should what we can assign people on, I guess it's inherently will be based on each organization's priority and time. But if we can remove that and just focus on the JIRAs themselves, I guess it can probably something can probably be organized that we just a bunch of people spending some time grooming them, right?
I guess to rephrase, you are saying every company or every organization will do their internal scrums, and then we'll have one board that everyone will come together and try to figure out which tickets to accept based on each organization's priorities?
I'm not saying each organization is going to do it in the open, but I'm saying that besides these internal plannings, we can probably organize some periodic events where we just basically doing this together and look at the backlog and determine based on merits and our roadmap, the ASF Mesos roadmap, and shared opinions. I don't know whether that'll be helpful.
So it'd be like prioritizing the backlog together, and then once the backlog is prioritized, every company can go through and commit to what it is that they feel like they have resources to actually like accept.
Right, because I feel there are two parts of things. One is my organization may have my internal priority, which determines what I will be working on. However, we as a community can probably determine whether this makes sense more than that. This definitely looks something that's like low-hanging fruit, which is also valuable, so we should probably prioritize that kind of prioritization, which I'm happy to participate.
Got it. Yeah. So should we like do that in one of the community things, or do you think we should do it as part of the one of the work group meetings? Should we do this like regularly during, like take some time during every community thing to groom it, like 15 minutes or something, or is it not enough time? And we should probably do it more face to face in one of the work group meetings.
Yeah, I mean, we can probably work out the details. I guess I'm just volunteering and showing the interest right now.
Okay.
The details are, yeah.
Yeah, I think as a work group thing, it would work pretty well. I'm not sure that it would make sense, depending on who shows up to the community meetings, but like not everyone's gonna have strong enough opinions on whether a JIRA ticket is worth accepting or not in a room of even this room is like.
Right. So my intuition is we probably don't need 30 people in a room to look at it together. That's everybody's time spent. So there's some balance. I don't know if,
Right. So at least maybe we should have one from each organization, or at least
something like that.
At least the active people, active organizations that are working on Mesos.
Yeah.
One from Mesosphere, one from Apple, one from Twitter. They're still active.
I think
something like that. Uber, one from Uber. Yeah, maybe a work group sounds like
maybe a work group of like 4 or 5 people, one per organization or something like that. But I think what's really important probably is to have some owner or some host who's willing to do that.
Yeah.
And to like bring the people together and work on it.
Yeah.
Okay. I think so.
I haven't heard any volunteers yet, but maybe we can bring it up to the dev list to say.
Do you want to lead that, Ian?
Do I want to lead that? Nah.
So you want to participate, but not necessarily lead. Is that correct?
No, at this stage, I guess I'm willing to say that let's work out the details later.
Okay. Yeah, let's try to figure out like a work group for that to see who are interested in participating in something like this. And
bring it up on the dev list and see.
I know also that I think the Marathon team just kind of reviewed a bunch of their tickets because they just moved them all into Jira for the first time. And their process was kind of to dump them all into buckets and then dedupe everything first. And then try and like prioritize it after they were pretty confident that they didn't have a million tickets all over the place. And so that kind of 2-step process, I didn't get any feedback on whether it worked for them or not, but I think it might be useful just so you're not trying to prioritize, thousands of tickets. You're trying to prioritize like 100 or something.
like deduplicating first, you mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So you like take all the tickets, just like triage them into buckets. Like this is a whatever type bucket, topic bucket. And then once you have your buckets, you can say like, okay, these are duplicates within these buckets. and then you get most of the duplicates out. And then you can kind of prioritize them after that.
Okay, yeah, I think we have like a lot of tickets. Don't know if, how we should, yeah.
I mean, it's kind of daunting. I don't know exactly how many open tickets we have. If you guys have a sense.
I guess the other thing with that approach is that you might get two different types of people interested in the different steps of triaging. Because like, if you could be like a beginner user of Mesos and just like get familiar with the tickets by dropping them into buckets, but you kind of need to be a little more familiar with it to like recognize duplicates and even more familiar to prioritize. So,
Yeah, that's true.
So when they did the D2, was like a community involved or is it mostly
I
folks?
think
from-
Jason did it.
There's only one person there.
Yeah, I think so. But there's possibility for community involvement maybe.
Okay, yeah, I guess that's what we're trying to figure out here is how to make it a community process.
But even bucketing, it might be a users list kind of thing and not a dev list kind of thing. Just bucketing the backlog.
Yeah. How come I cannot open the internet?
Yeah, but even if we have a lot, it's the kind of thing where if we categorize a few dozen tickets a week, then over time we could totally make progress on that.
Yeah, I mean, we do have labels and components and stuff which we don't diligently use, but we kind of try to label them, tag them in some way, and we already have that. Like we already have epic grouping. We already have some labels. We have components. Maybe one thing we could try out is actually give tag tickets with work groups, different work groups, and those work groups are responsible for prioritizing within that component, at least, so that they have a better idea. Like for example, containerizer, they can actually prioritize within that, like what are all the things that are related to them. And then maybe API stuff, maybe someone can prioritize for API. So maybe we can do it like work group wise, and like security related tickets, we can probably hand it over to one group, and the work group is responsible for kind of maintaining them. Maybe that's a little less daunting probably than trying to have one person try to figure out like the priority across all the things, because almost all the time there's
I
always
think that makes sense.
priorities within components. Okay, let me chew on that a little more. Seems like more scalable. If we give it to the work groups.
Yeah, or like, I guess we could also go to, yeah, I guess another idea would be to go in the maintainers direction, where once you have maintainers kind of more fleshed out, and presumably the work groups correspond to the components with the maintainers of that component in that work group, plus other people who are interested. Yeah, I think as long as we can somehow pick a ticket and give it to someone, and, like, put it on their lap and say, like, these are the tickets that seem relevant to you, go on to refine it further. I think that makes sense.
Yeah, so there's work groups and there's maintainers. We need to figure out how to do that.
Yeah, I don't know which slice makes more sense.
Yeah. Okay. Some good points there.
I think, I think work groups currently, well, neither of them are all that fleshed out, but yeah.
Yeah, I think there's like the networking is like I mean, we have Slack channels which are kind of active, which are also a kind of proxy for work groups, right? We have containerizer, we have Shape API, we have CMake stuff, we have networking.
Yeah.
So those are like, there are some already busy Slack channels there.
Right.
And we could make 1:1 correspondence with that to working groups that are active, and we can have people practice within that working group by tagging tickets somehow that belongs to this work group. That would be good. Okay.
Yeah, I guess we could also do like a so for like when we could also maybe do some voting. I don't know, or maybe not voting, but like send it out like not rather than like sending all the tickets to everyone to try to essentially that's what happens when like 5 people get together and try to go through the thing. If we just kind of broke it down further and said like, here's a dozen, could you take a look and categorize them? Here's a dozen. It's kind of what happens with like conferences, right? Where they try to like review talks or whatever. Like, not everyone looks at every talk. You're given a subset of the talk, and then there's typically like 2 or 3 feedback per talk or whatever. We could potentially break it down that way and like kind of do a rotation thing. The reason why I say that is because it's easier to get people to do things when you present it to them, as opposed to like same thing with like getting people to give talks, right? Like I need to reach out to them. And like if I just say anyone who wants to talk, just come to me. Like
No one comes.
yeah. Like oh, please go take a look at the board and do some stuff. So, because one is like too overwhelming. It's just too many tickets. But if we said like here are like, could you look at this range and just take it out of the way.
Yeah, that's a good idea. We can probably talk about it in for group meetings or community meetings forward to see what we can do.
Okay.
How we can kickstart the process. Okay,
Great.
That's some good
Looks like
points.
Jared's done.
We have only 2 minutes left, I guess. Almost time's up. Anything else anyone wanted to chat about? Or bring up? Something else on the agenda?
Yeah, so Neil and I are going to be 1.3 release managers. So I created a dashboard. I haven't looked at it in the past couple of days, but
Okay. Are there a lot of blockers
I
left?
think it's not, from what I remember, there were Jared's down now. So.
Okay. Okay.
Anyway, so for people who are working on stuff, please push it to target 1.4, or if you can get it in, then mark it as a blocker if it's a blocker or whatever. Please manage the tickets that you're currently working on to reflect what you want to do.
And when are you ending to cut?
We're hoping to cut at the end of this week, so tomorrow. But I think there are too many issues that are open from what I remember from the board.
When do you think you might actually cut? Does it sound like not really tomorrow?
I mean, kind of depends what the board looks like, but
Okay.
I think a more realistic would be early next week.
So try to get us any stuff for 1.3 by this week.
Sure.
So basically the message is for people to get their stuff for 1.3 end of this week, and we'll cut Monday or Tuesday, hopefully.
Yeah.
And 1.4 is just like a couple months away, right? So it's not like everything has to go into 1.3.
Yeah.
So we'll wait a couple more weeks, a couple more months, and could do some more testing. Don't rush it to 1.3. I would say. Cool. Thanks for volunteering to be the lead manager. Cool. All right. I think that's all we have for today. Thanks, guys. Thanks for joining.
Okay.
Later, everybody.
Yeah,
Later.
take care.